Good morning. In a few moments, we're going to celebrate the bris of baby Rice, Rabbi Yosef and Clara Rice's baby. In this week's Torah portion, we conclude the story of Joseph and the brothers. There's a prophecy in Amos where the prophet talks about the end of days, and he says it will be in those days v'nigash choresh el kotzer, which means the plower will encounter the harvester, which literally means that there'll be such an abundance in those days that the plower will be beginning to plow for the new season, and he'll encounter the harvester who's still harvesting from the previous season because there'll be such an abundance. However, the Medrash says that this verse is talking about Judah and Joseph, that Judah is considered the plower. He was perfect. Judah, on the other hand, is considered the Baal Teshuvah, the repentant, because he initially suggested selling Judah into slavery, Joseph into slavery. He was the one who sinned with his daughter-in-law, but at the end he stands up for Benjamin and says, take me in place of my brother Benjamin. So it's fascinating that the kings of Israel come from Judah, not from Joseph, even though Joseph is perfect. And Judah is the one who sinned but does teshuvah. Why? Because it's hard to learn from a leader who's perfect, because we're not perfect. But when we have a leader like Judah who shows us that we could change our ways, that is the real Baal Teshuvah. That is the leader that can inspire others. And that is what the Medrash says. Joseph is like the reaper. What does a reaper do? He detaches the fruit from the soil. The soil represents mundane earthliness. And the reaper is the one who elevates and detaches the spiritual the elements of life and rises above the earthly, mundane, physical. But Judah is the plower. He has to work with his physical, mundane, physical desires and urges to overcome them through his struggles and achieve greatness through that plowing and tilling his own soil. And that's the idea of circumcision, where the body that is given to us is not perfect. It has its human drives and tendencies that sometimes are negative, but through the toiling with our material physical body, we could refine it and elevate it to become a vehicle for the soul. There's a famous Rabbi, Rabbi Jacobson, who is the famous lecturer in New York, and Rabbi Jacobson tells a story that he was once invited for a Shabbaton to go be a speaker there, and right before Shabbat, a few hours before, they called and said it was canceled. Now he had no Shabbos plans because he was going to go to Shabbaton, so he quickly made plans, and he went over to a friend's house for Friday night dinner. When he came back, his family went to sleep, and he sat down on the couch to learn. He said he wakes up 3 o'clock in the morning, he realizes he fell asleep on the couch, he goes to bed, but he can't sleep for some reason. So after not being able to sleep for half hour, 45 minutes, even though he was tired, he couldn't fall asleep. He decided to go up to his office on the 4th floor of the building that he lived in to do some studying. So he walks up this flight of steps, and there on the stairwell, as he's walking up 3 o'clock in the morning, he sees a teenager sitting on the steps. And he sits down next to the teenager, and he starts talking to him, and the teenager's not responding. He puts his hand around him, he says, what's bothering you? He won't talk to him. Suddenly the teenager gets up and goes into one of the apartments. Rabbi Jacobson was concerned about him, so he decided to follow him in. He comes in with him, he sees him go into a room, he takes out a bottle of pills and starts putting pills in his mouth. Rabbi Jacobson runs over, knocks the pills out of his hand, and this teenager starts fighting with Rabbi Jacobson, and they start wrestling with one another until Rabbi Jacobson calms him down. And he says, tell me what's the matter. And the teenager starts crying, and he talks about his troubled life and the problems with his family and with his friends, and how he decided he wants to not live anymore and end his life. Jacobson spent the whole Shabbos consoling him, talking to him, encouraging him, inspiring him, comforting him. And after Shabbos, he put him in touch with professionals who could help him, who work with teens at risk. Rabbi Jacobson said today this young boy is a married man, happily married with a beautiful family, with wonderful children, a vital member of the community, a happy person leading a very fulfilled and productive Jewish life. Human beings are like Judah. We have our struggles, but we could learn from Judah to be the plower, to overcome our struggles, and to achieve greatness, and to refine our body and elevate it. And then in the end of days, says the prophecy, the plower will meet up with the reaper, and we'll see that both services of God, both those who are in the tzaddik level, perfectly righteous, but more so those who elevate themselves through effort and toil, of tilling their soil, their physical existence, to elevate it, which starts at the day of 8 days old when a baby's born and has a bris. We immediately begin to elevate the body, and this is a lifelong journey, like Judah, that achieves a greatness that can even surpass that of the tzaddik. Mazel tov to the Rice family, and Shabbat Shalom.